Hello and welcome to Healthy Weight After 40. My name is Kerri-Anne. I am a naturopath and a spiritual healer, and I'm passionate about empowering women to take control of their own health so that they can live their fullest lives. Now, my philosophy about weight loss for women is not just about looking good in a bikini, but it's about creating the foundations for optimal health. It's about making achievable and sustainable changes that suit you and your body. And you'll hear me talk a lot about achievable and sustainable. I want you to succeed in your health journey and set yourself up for a healthier future filled with energy and vitality. What's important to know is that as our body changes, so does its needs. Now, the obvious change is our hormonal changes as we're coming into perimenopause and menopause and beyond. So, as we move into this transitional time, our estrogen and our progesterone levels fluctuate, and this can change where we store fat, making it easier to gain weight around that middle area and making it harder to lose that weight. Slower metabolism also uh, impedes that weight loss and increases that weight gain. So we naturally lose muscle mass as we age because muscle burns more calories than fat. Our daily energy burn drops as well. Changes in hormone combined with stress and processed foods, less exercise, can make our cells less responsive to insulin, causing what is known as insulin resistance, which means that we're storing more glucose as fat rather than it being used. Stress and cortisol are a huge one for women. Most of us are so busy and we often put ourselves and our health last because who has the time, right? Constant chronic stress raises our cortisol, which in turn can increase our cravings. It increases our belly fat and fatigue and exhaustion. And then, if we're exhausted, we don't want to exercise or eat properly. And then, speaking of fatigue, we shift into sleep changes where we see these reproductive hormones affecting our sleep, and our poor sleep again has a direct link to weight gain. Now, this slide here shows the fluctuation of the hormones during perimenopause. So you see the estrogen in red, and it's fluctuating up and down before it decreases. And then we see that progesterone, and it's also going up and down, shifting and fluctuating before it finally decreases as we hit menopause. And it's these fluctuations in the estrogen and progesterone that are causing these symptoms. So, as you can see, estrogen affects your sleep. The fluctuating estrogen is affecting your sleep, your mood, your insulin sensitivity, skin, bone health, and metabolism. And you may be aware of, that increased risk of osteoporosis after menopause, and that is due to that decrease in estrogen. So progesterone, that declining progesterone affects our HPA axis. So the HPA axis is our hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, and that plays a role in our nervous system health. And so this is where we can see increased anxiety, depression, and insomnia, where you may not have had this previously. Now, I promise you, it's not all bad and it can be managed if you know how. So, it's natural process for our hormones to fluctuate and eventually decrease. What is impacting it is that chronic stress, some of the foods that we're eating, not getting enough sleep, and some lifestyle and environmental stresses as well. So, let's have a look at what doesn't work. And the first one is my pet hate, and it's when you're told to eat less and exercise more. So this may have worked when you were in your 20s and 30s, but it's not going to work now for most women. So when we over restrict or over exercise, our body perceives it as stress. So it's an extra stress on our body. And remember what stress does? It raises our cortisol. So high cortisol leads to more fat storage, especially around the middle. So if we're doing more exercise, harder exercise, we're putting that extra stress on our body. And I've seen women who have reduced their exercise start to lose weight rather than increase their exercise and not get anywhere. So what we need to do is have a look at our individual body and what our individual body is requiring. So instead of punishing our body into submission, we need to work with it. Okay, number 2 is those fad diets. And let's be honest, we've all been there. We've all tried them. Have we ever succeeded? How long have they ever lasted? Maybe they last for a little while. We stick to those, the diet habits really well. And then we'll go back to our normal eating habits and the weight just goes back on again. And sometimes the weight can go back on more, and we can be heavier than what we were before we started that diet. Fad diets that remove whole food groups or restrict calories are not a weight loss or a health solution. And remember, I talked about that achievable and sustainable. These diets are not achievable and they're definitely not sustainable. Long-term restricting calories and food groups leading to nutrient deficiencies, impacting on our health as we age. So we need to make sure that we're not eliminating those nutrients and vitamins that our perimenopausal bodies need. And these diets, they're just a great way to make you feel like a failure when you don't succeed. So that's another one of my pet hates is fad diets. Fad diets do not work, particularly for perimenopausal women. Now, fasting is a controversial one because there is research to show that it can work, and in certain circumstances and under professional supervision, it may work. However, fasting can also negatively affect perimenopausal women by disrupting hormone production, increasing stress levels and cortisol, and potentially worsening the metabolic changes that occur during this life stage. So affecting our metabolism, our blood glucose, cholesterol, blood pressure, and our weight gain as well. So fasting and skipping meals is not an achievable and sustainable way to set up those foundations for your future health. And remember, I said weight loss is not just about looking good in your bikini. It's also about setting those the foundations for your future health as we're moving into our later years, where our bodies are asking for more nourishment, rest, and nutrition. And number 4, what doesn't work? Whatever worked for your bestie. So finally, you are an individual and your body is unique, and therefore your health journey and weight loss journey is unique. So just because something worked for your bestie doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So, you'll see it all over social media. Go keto, fast, go plant-based, do this diet, do that diet, don't eat breakfast. It's all this confusing information. And yes, it may have worked for that person and it may work for some other people, but that does not mean it's going to work for you. And if you take one thing away from today, what I want you to remember is that your body is unique and you're going through this second puberty, this transitional change in your body. And this is where it's your time to spend time looking after yourself, nourishing your body, resting, nourishing your soul and your mind, and really looking after yourself so that as you move into your later years, we're reducing those risks of osteoporosis and heart attack and high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and all of those risks associated with lower estrogen and progesterone levels. So it's all about that achievable, sustainable weight loss, setting up those foundations. Okay, so what does work? So the first thing that is one of the main things that I see is stress. So supporting our nervous system to lower that production of cortisol from your adrenal glands is going to allow your body to regulate its fat storage. So rather than sending all that fat storage to, those hips, thighs, butt, and around your waistline, it's going to be sending it around your body or using it where it needs to be used rather than putting on weight. And reducing those that cortisol hormone is also going to help to reduce those carb and sugar cravings. So if you're craving sugars in the evenings, or high carb foods like breads and pastas and potatoes and chips and things like that, then perhaps have a think about how stressed you are, what your nervous system is like, and whether it needs a little bit of support for regulation. And we can do that with um, breathing techniques, taking time out for yourself, making sure you're resting when your body's exhausted. Because if we continue to live in that high cortisol state, then eventually our adrenals become what is called fatigued, and they can no longer produce cortisol as much as is needed. And that's when we get into that exhausted state. So there's a few different stages of cortisol and adrenal states in that nervous system. But that final one is that total exhaustion, where we've used up all our cortisol from too much stress, and our adrenals are struggling to produce it when we need it for energy. So there's supporting that nervous system in whatever way helps you. It might be gardening, it might be swimming, it might be meditating, it might be walking. There's some beautiful herbs and supplements to help support that nervous system whilst you're doing the other work as well. So balancing our blood glucose levels. Now, we all have fluctuating blood glucose levels, regardless if you've got diabetes or not. And these levels can affect how we feel and how our glucose is stored. So glucose is the product of the breakdown of our food. So carbohydrates and sugars get turned into glucose. They get pushed into our muscles for energy and into our organs and cells for different use. But if we've got too much going in, we've got high cortisol as well, then it's going to be stored as fat. So we need to balance it out. And to do that, we can incorporate protein with every meal. So protein slows down the absorption of glucose, which means that our blood glucose levels aren't going to spike and then bottom out. So if we're eating high carbs, our blood glucose levels are spiking and then they're dropping. And that's when we're feeling the fatigue and exhaustion. And so then we might reach for some more sugary foods or something, and that boosts our blood sugar levels up again, and then they're going to drop again. So that fluctuating blood glucose levels impacts our weight as well as how we're going to feel. So exercising after eating, that is also another great way to use that extra glucose, as it's going to be pushed into your muscles rather than stored as fat. So if you do have something that's high carb alongside your protein, then it's also always a good idea, 20, 30 minutes after you've eaten, to go for a walk or do some weights or do a little bit of exercise. Use those muscles to help that glucose get pushed into your muscles and used as energy rather than stored as fat. Building muscle. Now, building muscle is great. Now, as we age, we do lose more muscle, again, related to those hormones. Now, increased muscle mass improves our metabolism as muscle burns more calories and fat when it's at rest. So, the more muscle we have, the more fat that we're going to burn and the more glucose that we're going to burn. So, thinking back to that nervous system, over exercising is going to increase that cortisol. So I'm not talking about going hard at the gym and exhausting yourself or pushing yourself to the limits. I'm just talking about gentle exercise after you've eaten, particularly if your nervous system is dysregulated and you're struggling with fatigue and exhaustion. So, this may be gentle uphill walking or some swimming, yoga or some Pilates rather than, going to the gym and doing 30 minutes of cardio and 30 minutes of heavy weights. Go for it if your nervous system feels fine. But if not, you're going to be adding that extra stress on your body, equaling extra fat storage. And finally, we have eating real foods. So we're focusing on adding nutrient rich foods rather than taking things away. So we're making swaps rather than just eliminating everything. So remember how many times I talk about achievable and sustainable. Changing your diet overnight is not achievable and sustainable. So you want to start incorporating real foods into your diet. So, instead of having coffee for breakfast, maybe you're having some eggs on toast or some oats or something like that. And one other point about coffee is coffee on an empty stomach is going to increase your cortisol as well. So if you are struggling with that nervous system, or even if you're not, it's always a great idea to have something to eat before you have your coffee. And again, we're looking at lowering cortisol and reducing any of our glucose and foods being stored as fat. So your body is going to feel better when it feels safe and nourished as well. So if you're swapping, your takeaway lunch for, a leftover nutritiously cooked meal, or, I'm even happy if it's a beautiful protein microwave meal from the supermarket if you're in a rush. If you're making those tiny small changes and nourishing your body, you're going to feel better about yourself, and your body's going to feel better because you're giving it the nutrients that it's needing, as well as that beautiful rest and slowing down the nervous system. And once we've got the nutrients, our nervous system's better supported, we're balancing those blood glucose levels, that's when this perimenopause transition becomes more gentle. And when we feel safe and our body feels safe, and we have this beautiful connection to our food as a nutritional benefit, that we're creating these foundational changes for optimal health, then we're going to start seeing that weight come off. There's also the spiritual aspect of weight gain and not being able to lose weight. And there's the connection between not being able to let go. So if you're someone who's holding on to a lot of trauma or holding on to a lot of emotional stress, and that you haven't been able to let go, then we can hold onto that body weight as our protection. It's kind of like a flotation device. Like, we're drowning at sea, we're drowning in stress and emotional overwhelm and trauma. And so we're holding on to our weight around the middle, which is like our flotation ring. It's keeping us going. And so that spiritual aspect of being able to let go of trauma and stress. What are you holding on to that's also not allowing your body to let go of that weight, is also a really important aspect to think about as we're moving through this, this transitional time of perimenopause and menopause. So remember, as I said, everything is achievable and sustainable. They're the two key words. So not trying everything all at once, or it's just going to be too overwhelming. So maybe adding protein in for breakfast for the first couple of weeks. Maybe having breakfast before coffee, maybe going to bed an hour earlier, or setting yourself a nice bedtime routine to be able to slow that nervous system down. So by the time you're ready to go to bed, your cortisol levels have dropped, which allows your melatonin levels to rise, which makes you sleepier. So thinking of all of these different beautiful ways that you can uh, nourish your body, mind, and soul to be able to set up these foundational changes for your optimal health, and with that intent and that side effect of weight loss coming along. Now, if you're looking for some more support, I do offer one-on-one consultations as well, where we can create a beautiful treatment plan that is individualized to you. So we will go through a full history. We'll talk about lots of different things. Have a look at what you're eating now. You'll check your adrenals, your nervous system, hormones, your gut health, liver health. We'll have a look at a lot of it and see where you're needing some support and set you an individualized treatment plan as well. I also have a beautiful PT who works with women and on that same level as I am, supporting their bodies individually rather than punishing your health, punishing your body, impacting your health, increasing that cortisol. But what I'm really excited about is my Nourished and Aligned 8-week weight loss support program for women. So that's starting September the 24th. However, it will be a continual thing, and it will run a few times throughout the year. So if you do miss this one, there is a chance to jump on in at different times throughout the year. And it will be held in Castlemaine. I am looking at running them online as well if there is enough interest. The investment for that is $160 for the full 8 weeks. And over that 8 weeks, what you get is we meet for an hour, and then I will discuss a lot of the things that we've gone through tonight, but some extra stuff as well. So we'll go really in depth with stress and cortisol, how you can support that yourself, blood glucose regulations, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, reducing those cardiovascular risks. We'll talk about the role of estrogen and progesterone at a deeper level, and how you can support yourself naturally with those changes to avoid this, extra weight gain, and to be able to help to support your foundational health as well into the future. So we do that once a week for 8 weeks. You will also have access to a learning portal. So everything that I talk about in that week will be uploaded into a learning portal. There'll be meal planners, recipes, handouts that you can download on information we've talked about, as well as some videos talking about different things. So you'll always have access to that information even after the 8 weeks, so that you've got that continual support as well. And then on top of that, of course, there's the support of the other women in the group. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you can pop over to my website and have a look at that. There's some more information there. You can book a complimentary chat with me, a discovery call. If you're not 100% convinced or you've got some questions, we can have a chat about that. Or you can just jump straight in and book yourself in, and it would be great to see you. Now, I've shared some snapshots today about what's going on in your body and some steps that you can take, but doing it alone isn't always easy. So, this is why I have created this Nourished and Aligned, to be able to support you, to help reduce that overwhelm of where do I start? There's too much information. That's what I'm here for, to break it down for you, to give you that guidance and support, give you those step by step so that you can achieve your goals. Now, if you're interested in one on ones or any soul healing sessions, you can also find that on my website as well. If you'd like to sign up for my monthly emails, then you can do that on my website. So, thanks for listening. And I hope that this has been helpful for you and given you a bit of guidance around why that weight suddenly appeared or slowly crept up, and why no matter what you do, you can't get rid of it. I just want you to remember that it's not an indication of you and your willpower or any of that stuff. It is just your body going through these changes, needing a little bit of extra support and being nourished in a different way to what it is used to. So, thanks for listening. If you have any questions, please just you can shoot me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.